Welcome to Formed, where each week we navigate a relevant topic or question through honest conversations. We are three pastors with three different backgrounds on staff together at Irving Bible Church in Irving, Texas. We believe we are constantly being formed in the way of Jesus for the sake of the world, and we hope this podcast helps with that. So let's jump into this week's episode of Formed. Welcome back to another week of Formed.
Another year of Formed.
Another year. That's
Here we
right.
are.
2025.
2025.
We're doing this.
Is this like Formed season 3? Is that how this works?
That is
I don't know. It's year 3.
Year
so
3.
That
there
is
we
pretty
go.
crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Looking at the amount of episodes we've done in past episodes and how many of you guys have been listening and YouTube and sharing it with people. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
real quick, favorite thing you got for Christmas
Oh, wow.
off the top of your head?
I got this really cool mug that's just a perfect coffee mug from 10,000 Villages, which is a organization that helps support people in the developing world with kind of microfinance industry kind of stuff.
You would, Jesus,
And
juke us.
it's a fantastic mug for a fantastic cause. So I got some really great stuff, but I love my mug.
That's cool.
Yeah. My favorite gift was actually from someone on the screen couch. Look at that. It really was my favorite gift. He got me Mary Oliver's Devotions. So it's a book of her poetry that she actually put together. And I'd been meaning to actually pick it up, and then I got it for Christmas. And it's
I have to give credit where credit is due.
And we should.
There were 3 things down in the bag for Sissy, 2 of which I picked out, and then there was the book that was the Mary Oliver book that my wife picked out.
Yeah.
So Kim made sure that everybody in the family got the Mary Oliver book for Christmas this year, and she recommended that I get a copy for Sissy and for Lauren, our assistant. So
That's cool.
And I texted Kim to tell her. Yeah. But it was great. That's one of my favorite gifts.
So it came from Kim.
I did get a Dallas Willard book for Christmas from my mother. So
There's
Look
one
at
that you don't own? What?
I didn't have the hard copy of the new one on the parables. So.
okay.
Yeah.
Audiobook.
Yeah.
I
have it in 3 versions. I have the audio, the
would.
Kindle,
Wherever
and the
you want, like wherever he
copy.
is, he's got Dallas
He's
Willard.
got Willard.
What did you get?
Barb got me this book. It's about it's kind of like a leadership book, but it's like called The Situation Room, and it's like when presidents are in time of
Wow.
crisis.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I'm adding that to my list.
I like that.
how they handle it, what happens in the situation room.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes how it was built, but then through each like presidency and how
That's cool.
what happened during it.
Fascinating.
So
Okay.
I'm already like 150
Yeah.
pages in.
Yeah.
I'm
all in.
like adding that. It's
Yeah.
gonna go up the top of my list quickly. That
Yeah, I
sounds
like that.
fascinating.
I know. I was like, good job, Barb. It's a good gift. All right, 2025.
Here we are.
We try to ask
Here,
some
here.
questions, or last year at the beginning of 2024, asked some similar questions. So I was like, all right, let's look at the same set of questions, but a year later. And let's start with just the Big C church, like the church in general, or it could be IBC focused if we wanted to. What is like, I want to say a trend or a prediction or something that you believe about the church that will happen or will unfold in 2025?
Look into your crystal ball and
That's
see.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The thing I thought about yesterday, we had our pastoral staff meeting, and we talked about Carrie Newhoff is a podcaster, author, fairly well-known name in particularly church leadership, but I think in general in leadership circles. And he did a podcast on 5 disruptive church trends in 2025, and I thought, and Isaac, you're the one who encouraged us to listen to that, and we had a really good discussion in our staff meeting. And one of the things he talked about was Gen Z, and in 2025 seeing both revival and I think he called it retreat, right? Revival and retreat of Gen Z, and I thought that was really interesting.
That both of those are happening
At the
simultaneously.
same time. Yeah, at the very same time. And so I think if you look at research and surveys, we see that Gen Z is this generation that is spiritually open. And he continued to talk about research showing us that there's this drop off of the spiritual openness of Gen Z from teens into adulthood. And when you think about that, I think he rightly points out that spiritual openness doesn't necessarily translate into they're going to follow Jesus or even church attendance. And yet it is this opportunity for us to see what are the ways where we can meet this really deep longing and these needs that Gen Z has with the truth and the power of the gospel. So thinking about this generation and thinking about what are they really desiring. And as you learn more about how they're sort of wired, um, this idea that what they're really wanting is authenticity and
Yeah.
something to be real. And what is more real? What is more powerful? What is more compelling than Jesus?
Mm.
And so, how do we offer them Jesus? And how do we do that in authentic ways? Um, and I think part of that is even in our preaching and in our teaching, how do we share vulnerably, and even share about our questions and our struggles and our doubts, and how do we make space for that? I think that's something we really try to do here, that we want IBC to be a place where we can engage with questions and doubts, that's not something we shy away from or avoid, but we want people to know that this is a safe space for that. And we have a God who's big enough to handle that. And how do we offer solutions, but not in these trite, empty platitude, oversimplified ways, but rather, you often say that the deepest solutions to the deepest
Mm.
problems, human problems, are found in Jesus, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's so true. And so I think that's something that's really compelling to them. And then I think even thinking about, I think we see this in our world today in general, but particularly with this generation, of how they're isolated
Mm.
and yet hyper connected online.
Yeah.
And so, how do we offer a space where there can be a real sense of belonging, which again is something we're desiring to do in our church. Um, and then thinking about, I think this is a generation that is really passionate about justice and compassion, and particularly social justice issues. And how do we show them that the gospel, at the very heart of the gospel, is justice and compassion and the love of God, that God wants us to be people that stand up for the marginalized and the oppressed and the vulnerable. And so, kind of, as I think about that, as I think about our youth ministry, as I think about our young adults, really thinking about, we've got such an opportunity
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
really share the gospel in a compelling way. I really believe that if we can offer people who Jesus is, and if we can show them that's something that is really
Hmm.
captivating to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's good. It's good. One of the things that I think really stood out to me in that conversation, I'm definitely not one who kind of looks into the crystal ball
yeah,
and has that sense of orientation of the future. My wiring, my training, my background is all sort of looking at the past and history, not so much necessarily looking at the future. But I really appreciated the observations that Carey Nieuwhof made in that podcast and the accompanying PDF that his team put out. And one of the things that really struck me there was this observation that the kind of looming mental health crisis among pastors
Mhm.
is on a trajectory to get worse. And just some statistics there from the Barna organization and others about the health and well-being, mentally, emotionally, of church leaders, and some striking statistics of a third of pastors considered leaving ministry altogether in the last year. The one I think that really stood out, 18% of pastors who had contemplated suicide or self-harm. Just these kind of alarming statistics about the overall health and well-being of pastors. I remember actually being in the live audience when Carey was making a presentation a few years back, and he did a live poll of church leaders in the room about burnout. And it was, you were to respond like, how often have you experienced the symptoms of burnout over the course of the last, I think it was 6 months. And the options were, kind of constantly, or occasionally, or once or twice, or not at all. And the percentage that said not at all was a very tiny percentage
Yeah.
of this room full of 500 plus church leaders. In other words, the vast majority of the leaders in that room had experienced the symptoms of burnout at least once or twice just in the last 6 months.
Right.
And so the overall health and well-being, and of course, this is something that not only for myself and for our staff, but just, my burden for spiritual formation. And like, this is something that I care really deeply about, and really was interested in. And like, how do we, especially for our team, make sure that we're caring for one another, and we're creating structures and systems and environments that enable us to be emotionally, mentally healthy, and can help us to sort of regain our equilibrium when we lose it. Because the fact is, all of us have our emotional limits.
Yeah.
All of us have challenges that we face, and all of us will sometimes exceed those limits. And I know I've been in that place where I've been feeling burned out, or I've been feeling emotionally off balance. And so how do I manage all of that personally in healthy kinds of ways? And how do I try to make sure that the way we operate together as a team is taking all that into account, and caring for and creating the kind of systems and environments that we can thrive together in the midst of what is this sort of inescapable demands of ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I often think about that Pete Scazzero line, "You can't give what you don't possess," right? And I think that's so true that um, if I don't have healthy rhythms, and if I'm not living in a healthy way, there's not a whole lot I can offer, right? A little while, sure, but that's not sustainable in any way, and that's certainly not centered on Jesus. And so I think that's really good to make note of.
Yeah, I think with the church in 2025, I think that authenticity is going to be just more
That's good.
valued more and more. Especially, it just we've had a past episode on moral failures of pastors. It feels like it's every week that we're hearing something in America, and I think I wrote down, it's like more and more of the fluff will be less appealing.
Yeah.
Just that I think I even think back at a time here when we lost power, and it's like we had to we couldn't get it rebooted in time. We had to do an acoustic set on the stage, even when we lost power to like our lighting. And it just, if so many people talked about that, and it's not like an anti-production, anti-light stuff. I love seeing all the stuff at Passion, over the past few weeks, but it was just when it's all stripped down and it's just authentic, unscripted. I just feel like that is going to be more prominent.
Yeah, I
ever.
talked to a woman just in the last week or so who that was her very first Sunday here.
Oh wow!
And it was this sense of like, oh,
That's
this feels like home, right? This feels like my place. And yeah, I mean, I would love it. Wouldn't it be great if the church really started to get over our tendency towards kind of celebrity culture or celebrity pastors? I mean, like, I just think that would actually be really healthy for us.
You're a pretty big celebrity.
Well, I mean, other than
Barry,
I'm so thankful. I so just desperately do not want to be the celebrity pastor.
You don't even know
ever,
how to be a celebrity
ever.
pastor.
I would fail so hard if I even tried.
Where's my duct tape car? Okay, next question. What advice do you have for believers in 2025?
I think this is sort of advice that I think about for myself every year, and even as I went into this year thinking about it. But I think thinking about what are one or two small, consistent habits that you can practice that are going to help you grow in your relationship with Jesus. I think quite often I can for sure do this, and I know I have friends that have struggled with this as well, where we start out like with these really grand plans, and then we fail within a couple weeks or maybe days, and that's so disappointing. And then you're sort of, well, forget it, it's not worth doing. But if we can think about one or two just small habits that you can practice consistently, I think that makes so much of a difference in helping you grow. And so thinking about starting with where you are and then building from there. So for me, like this year, one of the things that I haven't done in, I think, probably like 30 years is scripture memory. Like I remember doing that as a child because my mom would make us memorize, but I haven't memorized scripture not in a consistent way in a very long time. I mean, I think over Lent we did it last year, and I really loved doing that, but then I sort of didn't do it after that. And so I'm trying this year to just I could easily start with like, well, I'm going to do a chapter a week and all of that, but I just try to do a verse a week now. And I'm just turning that over in my mind when I'm walking down the hall or going to bed at night. And it's been so good for me. And it's one verse. It's not a whole lot. It's like one sentence, 2 sentences.
Jesus
and it's
wept.
been so, I didn't start with that one, but I had that one down. But I'm just trying to, right now I'm working on Psalm 91, and I just did verse 1 this week, but it's been so good for me just to reflect and to meditate on that one verse. And it's just reminded me of God's character and my trust in him. And so I think that's what I would say, just one or two small habits.
Yeah, celebrating those small wins that are steps toward who you want to be, who you
Yes.
want to
Yeah.
become, right? Rather than like, I've got to, you know, knock it all out. I've got
Yep.
to like do this sort of monumental kind of accomplishment
Right.
that rushes to the finish line,
Yep.
rather to say, no, how might I be different at the end of
That's
2025
right.
if I took small incremental steps
Yeah.
that are achievable, that I can build into the rhythms of my life. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a paraphrase of James Clear from Atomic Habits, but the whole idea of like, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems.
Yeah.
Right. The kind of systems that we put in place in our lives, those habits that's going to be determinative of what outcome we experience.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to do some of that in my own life, my own systems as I move forward into 2025. I think for me, the thing that came to my mind is just the idea of 2025, a new year, a new start, a new opportunity. And I just think intentionally pursue vulnerability.
No, that's good.
As we move into this new year, one of the things that, I mean, Sissy, I know you and I have talked about it. Like my favorite book, I think it was your favorite book from last year, was Chuck DeGroat's book, Healing What's Within. And just
on
the
my
need for
nightstand.
us. Yeah.
I'm like,
Read it.
I'm like
Yeah.
scared to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's
But just
yeah.
to really give attention to
Yeah.
that interior world and to the reality of our wounds. It's a beautiful book. And there was an idea in there that just so spoke to me. The idea of, we sort of tend to use the word trauma almost, it's almost ubiquitous. It's
Yeah.
almost being
Yeah.
overused in these days. And yet we have to just take into account, like, it's in some ways we're talking about it so much because all of us have experienced some kind of traumatic experiences that have shaped us, that have marked us, that have left wounds. And but the idea that's there in the book is the notion that trauma isn't just what happened to us. It is what happened to us in the absence of an empathetic witness, right? That part of the reason that these things that happen are so wounding to us is there was nobody there to sort of see us, be with us in that, to bring empathy, to bring comfort. And so even now, as it relates to healing what's within, it involves us being willing and able to engage vulnerably with an empathetic witness. And that's a scary thing to do. And for some, it's like, I don't know even who I would do that with. Do I have a safe person in my life? And so whether that needs to be a Christian professional, a pastor, or a therapist, a trusted friend, that you can really lean into vulnerability, because I think that is so central to the healing work that God wants to do in us, and that God uses other people as part of his healing, transforming work in our lives, as we really press past what we might feel comfortable with and really enter into a real sense of vulnerability.
Yeah, there's something powerful about being known in that way, and I think that's really good.
I put for prayer for believers this year is don't forget about the unbeliever. I think it's gonna feel weird saying this compared to like Christians around the world that go through so much to share the gospel. And I think it is difficult now in a different way to share the gospel with unbelievers, with just social media and just the public view on Christianity at times. And there's a level of that makes it just easier just to not. And so and I think in that authenticity for this year, and I think there's just so much yearning for discipleship, but like we want to go deeper. That just that reminder of, even in that going deeper, the fruit of that and going deeper should reflect.
If our journey of discipleship is really about self-improvement, right? If it's really about becoming the better version of ourselves, we've kind of missed the whole point. Right? There is something that is profoundly self-improving about the journey of discipleship, right? We do become a better version of ourselves as ourselves become more like Jesus. But as ourselves become more like Jesus, we become much more oriented to the needs of other people around us, especially those who are far from God, if this discipleship journey is truly discipleship into Jesus, if we're really becoming more like him, we will then have a greater burden for the people around us who are far from God. I love that. That's really good.
Yeah, we talk
Don't
about
forget.
discipleship unto mission a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so resolutions, all the stuff to start a new year. A lot of times, the resolution is I want to read my Bible more.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for listeners that are like, "Hey, I want to read my Bible more, but I just don't want to like I'll do one day and then or 3 days and then I'm out on it." What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Can I plug Bible study? I would say
Yeah.
join Bible study, Man Year for Guys. We're doing all sorts of things, young adults. I'm not just plugging one of our ministries.
Yeah.
I really do believe that if you want to do something like that, if you're starting a practice, I mean, it's been scientifically proven that as we do that together in community, that's a great way to actually do to practice that to make that stick, and so there's something about doing that in with others that gives us a sense of accountability, of companionship, and it's how we're created. We're created for community, and so I think there is something powerful in doing that. So I'd love for people, if you're here at IBC, to get plugged into community here. But if that's not something that you're able to do because of your schedule or whatever it is, I do still think that if you're wanting to read the Bible and grow in that practice and discipline, it is helpful to talk about it with others. And so is there a way that you can engage with a friend or a family member? And maybe that's a quick conversation. I know people who text each other about, hey, here's what God's teaching me this week. And just or here's questions I have about something I read. What do you think about that? And so sometimes it's by text, sometimes it's a conversation. But I do think there's something good about bringing other people into that.
Really good.
There's certainly something about spending time alone in God's word, but there's also something about doing that together in community.
Yeah, it's great. I think back to even our discussion in the previous question about both kind of small wins, right?
Yeah.
Like don't try to overdo it and wind up then you get only so far and fail.
Yeah.
So
Somebody's
small
plans
wins
are like 10 chapters a day.
yeah. And then systems. And so I absolutely greatly admire those who read through the whole Bible in a year.
Sure.
Like that's really great. I've not read through the whole Bible cover to cover in a while, but I make regular reading a part of my kind of rhythm of life. And I think sometimes there can be that, like, I need to read it cover to cover in ways that do wind up, people hit Leviticus and it's like, I mean, that's an ongoing joke, but it's the ongoing joke because it's so true. Like,
Right.
how many times have you sort of fallen off in Leviticus? And so I think that rather set a goal that is more attainable, to take smaller sections, but then immerse yourself more deeply. I looked back at my reading list for this past year, and I found that I actually read fewer books in 2024 than I'd read the last several years. And yet I actually think I read more deeply last year, right? Like, I actually think maybe I got more out of my reading for the year by reading less rather than trying to just consume so much. I think the same can be true with the scriptures, that we can wind up wanting to get so much, and we actually then wind up reading at a bit more superficial level rather than actually the opportunity to immerse ourselves even more deeply. So, one approach that we actually did kind of as a church community a couple of years ago was, if you map out the New Testament over the course of a year, if you read one chapter every weekday over the course of a year, you can read through the entire New Testament cover to cover in 1 year. So you've covered the whole New Testament in a year, but you've done it even a little more deeply that way, in a very reasonable one chapter a day, with the weekends to kind of catch up if you've gotten behind. So we're, a few days into the new year. So maybe you have a few chapters to cram to catch up. But one chapter every weekday, you can read through the whole New Testament a year. Another just cool pattern is Luke and Acts, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, both written by Luke, the physician, both really kind of part one and part two of the same story, the life of Jesus and the life of the early church. And if you add the two books together, it's 52 chapters. So again, if you were to prioritize a chapter a week and just kind of immerse yourself in that chapter from Luke or from Acts, you would read through Luke and Acts over the course of 1 year. But really, the opportunity to immerse yourself in the life of Jesus
That's great.
Immerse yourself in the life of the early church. But both of those are just examples of some kind of a system, right?
Yeah.
A attainable goal and a predictable system, I think, is what helps us to actually be able to engage more deeply.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be afraid to have the catch-up days.
Yeah.
That Barb and I are doing. I'm reading cover to cover. It's like I've read the whole Bible, but in like chunks or different books at a
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So we're trying to read it together this year, and we're actually using the Join the Journey, stuff through Watermark, because they have a kids version too, with like cards and stuff, and a kids podcast for the kids. So we're like collectively kind of doing it as a family, and yeah, like I missed like 2 days in a row, but I just sat down. I was like, all right, I can catch up now.
Yep.
And don't be afraid to do the catch up.
Yeah.
It's okay.
There's lots of different reading plans. I think one thing I agree with the idea of systems. I think that's really good. I also think that I like to read, but I know for some people that to find time to do that is hard. So maybe you need to do audio, and maybe it's on your drive to work or your run in the morning, whatever
Bible
it is.
recap.
Yeah, what are ways
Yeah.
you could do that?
Yeah.
With technology today, we've got so many options of how we can immerse ourselves in God's word, even for 10 minutes a day.
Yep. You guys, I think, both know I'm a big fan of N.T. Wright, and he has his own translation through the series of commentaries he did, the New Testament for Everyone. He has his own translation of the New Testament. Well, now it's out on audio, and so you can have N.T. Wright's voice reading N.T. Wright's translation of the New Testament. And it's one of those that, similar to like the Message, it's just a fresh articulation of maybe verses that we're familiar with. I mean, the key difference is what the Message does is very much a paraphrase, whereas Tom Wright is doing a much more of a translation and yet fresh language that he uses to really capture what sometimes are sort of old familiar verses for us in a new way that sometimes slips past our defenses, and like, oh wow, that's what that says, that's what that means. And so plus he's just got a great British accent. So
I know, I feel like I gotta go listen to it now.
Yeah,
it's good.
All right, can we push birthday stuff to next week? Sissy had a big birthday this past week, and I have questions, and she's down to talk about it, and I'm excited for it. So I think it can be a fun.
I'm a little scared of your questions now. We need another week.
Okay, let's transition to banter. If this is your first formed episode of the new year, this is like your resolution. You're like, I'm gonna listen to more formed podcasts.
I think that's a great New Year's resolution.
That's a good resolution. Everyone
I love it.
That's right.
We try to end the podcast with some fun banter stuff. So this one there's a wide variety of paths you could take with this. What would you recommend the listeners try in 2025?
I need you to go first, because mine's like really not good.
All right.
I'm going to get made fun of.
So
mine's kind of oldish, but
so mine is inspired by where I took several of our pastors for the first time in 2024 that our listeners ought to try in 2025. It's a food. So if you haven't had momo, you've got to have momo, right? So this is a Nepali dish, kind of a staple dish from Nepal. And we have neighbors who are from Nepal who fixed us momo quite a while ago now. And it was just like, this is the most fantastic thing I've ever eaten in my life. And the sauce was like, this is the spiciest thing that I've ever had. But I loved it. And so I found here in Irving, there is a great little restaurant that serves food from Nepal, and then not far from the church there's actually a kind of fast food version of it, momo to go, and so it's like a dumpling that come with all these. The momo to go has a variety of different sauces, but then there's kind of a traditional sauce that you dip it in. And there probably are plenty of people that listen to Form that have had this before, but I'm guessing there's a few that haven't, and you should absolutely try it in 2025.
Okay, momos.
Yours is that's so much better than mine.
I'm so excited.
I'm such an old lady already.
You thought I was going to say you should read Dallas Willard in 2025.
No, I knew you'd have something food oriented.
Take vitamins.
I take a lot of supplements. All right, mine's really boring, but this is one consistent habit that I practiced last year that has like been really good for me that I'm going to take into this year. Is I can't even say it because Isaac's laughing at me. All right, I drink a glass of water before I drink my coffee every morning.
Nice.
And it's like I start off, I'm like, I already got 16 ounces of water down.
Good.
And so I get to hit my water goal. I have a water goal every day that I try to hit. And
I've heard it's great for your metabolism.
for your
to
metabolism, for your
hydrate
skin,
first thing in the
I
morning.
have seen, yes.
I need to do this.
Yeah.
I need to start
A glass of water.
as part of my morning routine.
Before I drink my coffee.
That's
I
telling you.
did have
difficult,
I had
but-
like drink more water as like one of my like resolutions.
Well, this is
this
like
year.
an easy way.
Like,
Like
a glass of water
I've already got 16 ounces down.
after you wake up.
Yep.
Okay.
so good.
All right. Well, mine's kind of like food and stuff centric too.
Yeah.
Grow something and cook it.
Okay.
Nice.
And some point in 2025,
Yeah.
there's something so satisfying about that.
Did
You're
you do this
cooking
already, or
something
this is
that
like-
you have grown?
Well, like even if we'll do like our like herbs to like cook
Nice.
in.
Yeah.
And even something like that's like fun. It's like, oh, I need some basil. Bam.
Are you putting that in
And
your peanut butter and jelly? Is that what's happening?
Whoa! Honeycomb cereal. But no, like herbs. We
That's
we
great.
did some tomatoes and
Tomatoes.
stuff.
Oh.
Peppers.
Nice.
But like, and then my mom like flexes on us with
She
like,
does, right?
hey, let's get the kids out. Let's dig up the potatoes and
Wow.
then make-
Isaac's mom is like a world-class gardener.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So we fix mashed potatoes with the kids love that.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
this is what we dug up.
Yeah.
That's
together.
great.
And
Yeah.
so
That's a
anyway,
good one.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
been a while since we've had the little kind of patio garden thing going, but we
Yeah.
definitely had times where we had the makings for either salsa, pico de gallo,
Yep.
or you could do the bruschetta,
Uh-huh.
the tomato and basil, and
Yeah.
I love it.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
great. It is fun.
grow something and cook it.
Grow something and cook
Like
it.
it.
It's satisfying. Unless you want to like buy a chicken and like kill it or something. Fix
Raise
chicken.
it. You got to raise it. And
You gotta
then-
raise the
yeah.
chicken and
yeah.
then yeah.
Sissy and I both use a journal that I've really been reconnecting with in the new year. It's been so good. But one of the things in that journal that's a daily prompt is just to begin with gratitude.
Love it.
And
yeah.
boy, I tell you, that's such a
It's a
helpful
Yeah.
spiritual practice, right? Of
Yeah.
like that we actually are cultivating. Like part of our living lives characterized by joy is because we've cultivated a heart of gratitude. And
Mhm.
so I would definitely, when you're talking about small wins
Yep.
and building systems, like there's a great practice just to build into your everyday life. And it's just a matter of like, you got 3 or 4 lines to
Yeah.
just write down. Sometimes it's just, I have enough space to write 2 things
Mm.
that I'm grateful for. I wrote about Sissy and her birthday and, my gratitude for her presence in my life. And yeah, just a great practice that maybe that's not quite as fun part of banter, but I definitely would say if you're wanting to try something new
Yeah.
for your life in 2025, daily practice of gratitude.
Sissy's like water.
Water.
And
I'm writing
like I'm-
Sissy and she's writing water.
coffee.
I feel like I'm killing it in life
Guys,
right now.
y'all-
Drinking 1 glass of
You
water.
guys would be proud. Something a food that I've been all
What'd you
about
eat?
over the past like
Yeah.
month.
Drum roll.
You ready?
What is it?
Eggs.
You've been eating eggs?
Yes,
That's amazing.
I know.
We're supposed to be impressed by this.
Yes.
Yes.
He is never. Yeah.
Eggs has not been
Eggs
my
is
thing.
one of
My
my
picky,
favorite
my
foods.
picky eater kids at least eat
Yeah.
eggs. Come on, man.
I've been all about them.
Oh, I love eggs.
It's awesome. Yeah,
I'm
eggs
proud
are
of you.
amazing.
So
So
anyway.
many
For
different
you.
ways to make them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Good
it.
Yeah.
job.
It's a
Look
big
at you.
moment, guys.
You've been
Growing.
missing out.
Eggs
Yeah.
are
But
in,
no
they're
more.
in my diet now.
Wow.
All right, we'll be back next week with another week of